I, 28M, still can't believe I'm writing this, but I need to get it off my chest. This happened last weekend, and I'm still processing everything. My mother passed away from cancer 3 years ago. She was everything to me. Raised me as a single parent, worked 2 jobs to put me through college, and was the kindest soul you'd ever meet. She taught me to always stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. That lesson would end up being more important than I ever imagined. I've been with my fiancé for 4 years, and our wedding was scheduled for next month. Everything seemed perfect until this weekend when her family hosted an engagement dinner at their house. It was supposed to be a celebration with both families, though obviously my side was smaller, just my aunt and cousin who helped raise me after mom passed. The evening started normally enough. My future in-laws have always been a bit status conscious, but I'd learned to navigate their subtle jabs about my more modest background. My fiancé usually defended me, which is one of the reasons I fell in love with her. But something was different that night. It started during dinner when my future mother-in-law began talking about wedding traditions. She made a comment about how certain people wouldn't understand their family's sophisticated approach to weddings. My aunt tried to mention how my mother had always dreamed of seeing me get married, and that's when everything went sideways. My future father-in-law actually laughed. He said something like, "Well, I guess some people's dreams are smaller than others." My fiancée giggled along with her siblings. The room got quiet, but they didn't stop. My future mother-in-law jumped in with, "At least she won't be here to embarrass us with her simple tastes." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I looked at my fiancée, waiting for her to say something, anything, to defend my mother's memory. Instead, she smirked and added, "I mean, can you imagine her trying to fit in at the country club? In those clearance rack clothes she always wore." My aunt gasped. My cousin started to stand up, but I put my hand on his arm. The room was spinning, but everything suddenly became crystal clear. 3 years of subtle comments and backhanded compliments clicked into place. They'd always looked down on my mother, on my background, on everything about me that wasn't up to their standards. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against their expensive hardwood floor. The room went silent. My future mother-in-law had that smug look she always wore when she thought she was being clever. My fiancé was still smiling, though it faltered when she saw my face. "I've been trying to understand you people for 4 years," I said, my voice steady despite the rage and hurt churning inside me. "I've smiled through your condescension. I've accepted your backhanded compliments. I've watched you look down your noses at everything about my life that wasn't up to your precious standards." My fiancé started to say something, but I held up my hand. "The woman you're mocking? She worked cleaning houses and waiting tables to make sure I could go to college. She skipped meals to buy me books. She died thinking I'd found someone who would love me the way she did, unconditionally and without judgment." I pulled out my chair and pushed it in carefully, the way my mother always taught me to be respectful even when others weren't. "The wedding's off. I'd rather be alone forever than spend my life with people who think it's funny to mock a dead woman who gave everything for her child." The chaos that erupted was immediate. My fiancée burst into tears, her mother started sputtering about deposits and invitations, and her father stood up red-faced about making a scene. I walked out, my aunt and cousin right behind me, and didn't look back. That was 3 days ago. My phone has been blowing up with messages from her family calling me oversensitive, from her friends telling me I'm overreacting, and from my fiancé begging me to understand it was just a joke. But my mother taught me that jokes aren't funny when they hurt people, and the only joke here was thinking these people would ever see me as their equal. I know some people might think I overreacted. Maybe they're right. But when I think about my mom, working those double shifts with a smile on her face, never complaining, always teaching me to be proud of who I am, I know I made the right choice. I just wish I'd made it sooner. Update. The aftermath has been intense, and I feel like I need to share what's happened since that night. First, thank you for all the supportive messages. I didn't expect this to blow up the way it did. Things have gotten more complicated. Yesterday, my fiancé's sister showed up at my workplace. She had screenshots of texts from the past few years, conversations where my fiancé and her mother had been mocking my mom even before she passed away. Apparently, when my mom was going through chemo and had lost her hair, they were making jokes about how she finally had an excuse to wear those awful wigs from the discount store. Her youngest sister said she'd always felt uncomfortable with how they treated me and my mom, but was too scared to speak up. She showed me texts from when my mom was in hospice, where my fiancé complained about having to visit her because the place smells like poor people. I had to step out of my office and throw up in the bathroom after reading those. What kills me is remembering how my mom always defended my fiancé. Even when she was so sick she could barely speak. She'd tell me how lucky I was to find someone from such a good family. She made me promise to take care of my fiancé's family like they were my own. The whole time, they were laughing at her. My aunt called me later that day with more revelations. Turns out my fiancé had been pressuring the wedding planner to change all the elements my mom and I had planned before she passed. The mother-son dance song my mom picked? They called it tacky. The family recipe cards she wanted included as wedding favors? They were planning to accidentally forget them because they were too low class. The more I learn, the more I realized this wasn't just one bad night. This was who they always were, and I was too in love, or maybe too desperate to belong, to see it. My fiancé keeps sending these long messages about how she's changed, how meeting my mom made her realize what real strength is, how watching her fight cancer taught her about dignity. But all I can think about is her laughing while her parents mocked the woman who gave up everything for me. Her father tried a different approach. He showed up at my gym this morning with a business proposition, said he'd been impressed with my backbone at dinner and wanted to offer me a position at his company. Apparently, they need someone with street smarts in management. The way he said it made it clear he thought he was doing me a favor, lifting me out of my unfortunate circumstances. I told him I already had a job I was proud of, just like I was proud of my mom for working honest jobs to raise me right. The worst part? Some of our mutual friends have started taking sides. They're saying I'm throwing away a good thing over one bad joke, that my mom would want me to be practical about my future, that everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. But my mom also taught me that character is who you are when you think nobody's watching. And now I know who they really are. My fiancé's sister keeps sending me more evidence, years of text messages, social media posts, photos with cruel captions. Each one feels like a fresh punch to the gut, but they're also helping me see how blind I've been. There's one from my mom's funeral, where my fiancé is complaining about having to pretend to be sad about some cleaning lady dying. I remember that day. I was so grateful for her strength, for how she held me up. Now I know she was just acting, probably counting the minutes until she could leave. Last night, I visited my mom's grave for the first time since all this happened. I sat there for hours, talking to her like I used to. I apologized for not seeing through them sooner, for almost bringing these people into the family she worked so hard to build. As I sat there, I remembered something she used to tell me. Sometimes the most expensive things in life are worth the least, and the things that cost nothing are priceless. My cousin's been staying with me, worried I might do something stupid. But honestly, I feel clearer than I have in years. It hurts, God. It hurts so much, but it's a clean kind of pain, like setting a broken bone so it can heal properly. Final update. It's been 2 weeks since that dinner, and I think this will be my last update. I need to start moving forward. Yesterday, I finally got the courage to go through the box of mom's things I'd been keeping in my closet. Inside, I found a letter she'd written to me before she passed, meant for my wedding day. Reading it broke me down completely, but it also helped me know I made the right choice. She wrote about how proud she was of the man I'd become, how she hoped I'd find someone who would love me for exactly who I am, not who they wanted me to be. She mentioned how she'd noticed my fiancé and her family seemed uncomfortable around her, but she hoped they'd learn to see past their prejudices. Even then, she was giving them the benefit of the doubt. The letter ended with, "Remember, sweetheart, marriage isn't just about joining two people. It's about joining two families. Make sure you choose people who will honor not just your future, but also your past." My fiancée made one last attempt to fix things. She came to my apartment unannounced, crying about how she'd grown up privileged and didn't know better, how she wanted to change, how losing me made her realize what really matters in life. For a moment, looking at her standing there in tears, I almost wavered. Then I remembered how she laughed at that dinner, how easily cruelty came to her, how she'd been playing two roles for years, the supportive partner in front of me, the mean girl behind my back. I told her she wasn't crying because she'd lost me, but because for the first time in her life, her actions had consequences. Her youngest sister has been surprisingly supportive. She told me their family is in chaos. The country club crowd is divided. Some think they went too far, others are angry I dare to stand up to them. Apparently, her mother is furious that their reputation is damaged. Her father's still telling everyone I'll come crawling back when I remember my place. But here's the thing about remembering your place. My mom taught me that your place is wherever you choose to stand with dignity. She cleaned houses and served food with her head held high because she knew her worth didn't come from her job title or bank balance. I've started therapy to process all this. My therapist pointed out something interesting. She said sometimes people who come from money are so afraid of losing their status that they'll tear others down to feel secure. I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. The wedding venue called about the deposit. I told them to keep it and host a dinner for the local homeless shelter instead. My mom used to volunteer there during holidays. Somehow, that feels like a better way to honor her memory than a wedding with people who thought she was beneath them. My aunt found an old video on her phone from Christmas 2 years ago. My mom was already sick then, but in the video, she's in the kitchen trying to teach my fiancé how to make her special apple pie. I remember being so happy seeing them together. Now I notice things I missed. How my fiancé barely concealed her disgust at getting her hands dirty. How she kept checking her expensive manicure. How she accidentally dropped the pie later. Some people have asked if I regret making such a public scene at the dinner. I don't. My mom taught me that there's a difference between causing a scene and standing up for what's right. Sometimes the two just happen to look the same. I'm not writing this for advice anymore. I'm writing it for anyone else out there who might be compromising their values for the sake of fitting in with people who will never truly accept them. My mom used to say, better to be alone for the right reasons than together for the wrong ones. The box with mom's things is back in my closet, but I kept her letter on my nightstand. Last night, I finally replied to all those messages from my ex's family and friends. I sent them all the same response, a quote from mom's letter about choosing people who honor your past. Tomorrow, I'm going to start packing up the apartment. My cousin's roommate is moving out, and he's offered me the spare room. It'll be a fresh start, somewhere without memories of my ex pretending to be someone she wasn't. Mom's apple pie recipe was in that box of her things. I think I'll make it this weekend. Not to share with anyone, just for me, to remember her by. She always said baking was therapy for the soul, and right now, that's exactly what I need. To everyone who supported me through this, thank you. To anyone in a similar situation, you deserve better. And Mom, if you're somehow reading this, you were right, just like you always were.